cost report. Paid that the first week in March after we got our cost report back in end of February. We did have a board meeting, our working session yesterday, went through some board education kind of around just our cost-based reimbursement and kind of what all happened with that. And then it was long. It was a long presentation. It was a good level of detail. I believe you guys have that packet of what we went through. If you have any questions off of that, let me know. But I'm going to go over the same thing, but just a little more condensed for the sake of time. But by all means, if you have any questions along the way or after this, come talk to me or ask me. So, going to get into how Medicare reimbursement works and then kind of how things played out throughout the year to get to that 1.1 million. So, being a critical access hospital and rural health clinic, we're paid by Medicare cost-based reimbursement. These reimbursements affect our inpatient, swing bed, outpatient, and rural health clinic departments. For the inpatient, swing bed, and rural health clinic, we're paid per diem or a per day lump sum. And for outpatient side, we're paid a percentage of our charge. Kind of looks at something that I think I believe cost to charge ratio kind of gets into play. But for all these areas, for our reimbursements rates, they're always based on the past. So in fiscal year 19, we were paid on fiscal year 18's costs. And then those costs made up our rates for the future. So when do our rates change? When we owe Medicare money or when do we possibly receive Medicare money? The different times of the year. So obviously when our fiscal year cost report is done, like at the end of February, like what just happened, that's a time that our rates would change, and also we would know our rates, and when we pay Medicare, that was the outcome. May 2020, the tentative settlement, that is a point in time where they send us correspondence, they send us a letter, they pretty much agree with the cost report that was submitted, and they say, yep, these are your new rates, so that's our official rate letter. And then it says, if we get the letter on May 1st, and it would say May 15th, the rates change. If they owe us money, they'll say, hey, you'll get paid within 21 or 14 days, direct EFT with our claims that we usually get. So that's that letter. Around the same time, there's a thing called interim revised payment retroactive lump sum adjustment. That looks at what you've gotten paid so far in fiscal year 2020 and what your new rates are, and it kind of shores up what you need to pay or what you would get received from that time period. In September of 2020, it's called the same thing, interim revised payment and retroactive lump sum adjustment. That time is a little bit different than May, as to we give them our updated cost also, not just them looking at our claims data or looking at our numbers. But they had come up with new rates at that point in time, and also let us know if we owe money, or if we pay, or if they're going to pay us, then they'll pay us within 14 to 21 days after that letter. Last two different times when our rates could change, or owe or receive Medicare money, cost report desk audits. So every cost report that we send to Medicare, they have their team audit. It's called a desk audit. They go through, ask for support for invoices, clarity on a few things, get some other support, and then based on that, they find things that they maybe need to push to different cost centers or different departments and within the cost report, and that affects your reimbursement. They find something that wasn't originally allowed and now it was supposed to be allowed, so then they pay you money, or vice versa. If we had something in a bucket that we said was allowed, we thought was allowed, they dig into it, no, it should have been allowed or it should have been under a different department, that is an allowable expense, and we pay back money. So that's one other time that they're usually about a year or two behind in the desk audits. So just got done with 17's desk audit this last year and during fiscal year 19. Last time is if we asked them to change our rates, which we can only ask them to change our rates to decrease. We can't ask them to increase, obviously. So if we think, during the middle of the year, we really think we're doing really good, our volumes, which I'll get into in a little bit. If we think we're going to owe Medicare money, or if we think our rates are just too high, we can contact our Medicare Administrative Contractor, MAC. They're a third party that deals with Medicare for us. We contact them and say, hey, we want to drop our rates $50, $100 a day, because that's what we feel like we should be getting paid, just so we don't, just to make sure that our rates are where we think they should be. So what happened in fiscal year 19 that we have a payback? So two things happened. Our costs went down and our volumes went up. So the next part is what are the exact amounts that we paid back or received from Medicare, part of our cost report. So inpatient, we owed money, we were overpaid in 19 for 18's rates. We were overpaid $192,000. Our rural health clinic, we were actually underpaid $95,000. So that part of the cost report, they're giving us money because we were underpaid. Our rates should have been higher. Our costs were higher than what they had. Our outpatient, we were overpaid $115,000. And the biggest area, swing bed, we were overpaid $887,000. So our volumes, this number, the biggest number I want to talk about a little more. Our volumes went from 292 in 18 to 766 Medicare swing bed days in fiscal year 19. So that skews, the denominator when you're talking about your cost, your per day charge. That growth was 260%. It was a big anomaly. I'll go into it at the very end, kind of our historical swing bed days. But when you keep your costs relatively the same or a little bit, drop them a little bit, and then you also increase your days so much when we were getting paid, which is in your packets, we were getting paid $3,000 a day. When our days went up so much and our cost stayed about the same or dropped a little bit, our reimbursement actually, what should have been our cost was actually $1,800 a day, so they overpaid us that $1,200 for each day. With the total payback with all of our different settings or different department areas of 1.1.
Jake, does this affect the customer at all in any way? If they,
No.
whatever they ended up paying is significantly less than the 1,800, so they're not out of pocket here.
No, so, a lot of Medicare, they have, a secondary which usually picks it up. Or if they do have, a small deductible, they would always have to do their way. So no, it wouldn't have affected the patient or patient having to pay more. So going into a little bit more what happened. What happened was we were getting paid inflated amounts in aspect to our current costs throughout fiscal year 19. We're getting paid rates in 18 and 19 based on 18's rates in fiscal year 19, when 19 was a better year for cost and volumes. Getting paid the prior year's rates or prior period's rates is usually okay from year to year, because the variances in costs and volumes, expenses and volumes really don't vary that much, a whole lot. That wasn't a case for us, especially when you're increasing your spend by 260%. It's a very large number, and like I said, separate costs even dropped a little bit. So big change for us. So like I said, year to year, that fluctuation, like you kind of seen it in like the inpatient side. Our inpatient growth wasn't huge, but we did owe a little bit of money there because we did drop our costs, but our actual volumes didn't, increase, skyrocket like the swing bed ones. So that number is more normal than 115, but you hope in other areas, other settings, that it kind of gets offset to something smaller. One other thing about what happened is I should have been tracking things better. I should have been getting estimates. There's a thing that's called a cost report model. It's the thing we can get from. It's a big workbook spreadsheet that we get from my Bailey, and it estimates throughout the year. Plug in our costs, plug in all of our claims data, plug in a lot of other stats, and it'll say, okay, here's how much we're estimating that you owe. Here's how much we're estimating that your rates are going to be. And that model I wasn't using. I hadn't been using it, as I honestly should have been, because then, yeah, we would have still owed $1 million. We still would have owed money, but at least it wouldn't have been, that sticker effect, that shock. We would have known about it back in earliest for this last year would have been July, August. So that is one thing that we're gonna correct in the future, and I'll go over that a little bit, but I wanted to say that too, that, on estimating, back in, July, like I said, we would have potentially had to pay 3/4 of what we paid because we're already that far through the year, $800,000, so that's when we could've got the model, and then we would at least known that we were gonna have to pay Medicare that amount, and our rates were gonna drop as such. So going forward, talk about that model a little bit more. This will give us an estimate where we're at year to date, so we kind of have a feel for what we might get paid for Medicare, what we owe, what our new rates are gonna be. I'll review this with Laura every month. I'll also sit down and, go over the financials before they go to the board and review them, and, if there's any questions or things come up, we'll address them then, but review that model there. Then we'll also report it to the board and the council, our current standing with Medicare, any estimated overpayment, underpayment we have with them. I'm gonna put it with our stats, like I bring, our operating margin each month, our AR days we're at for accounts payable. There'll just be another line item on there. So then it's kind of a running topic of, because if we do see if that's starting to climb up, for one of our areas are doing really well and costs are going down, or volumes are doing really good, say, example in the clinic, say that's just booms, which is a good thing, don't get me wrong, but then say if it says we owe $400,000, or it keeps creeping up every month, we can go to Medicare and say, hey, drop our rates. We don't want to be getting paid this much because at the end of the year, we're gonna have to pay you a big payment anyway, so let's just, get it settled now. And that's something, like I said, we can't do. Last two slides. Historically, in the past, I just put, past since 16, our swing bed days to kind of show that, that 766 is big, it's a huge jump. 16 we have 445, 17 353, 18 292, and last year 766, so that jump is real big. Then also I put on here the past paybacks and receivables. It was easier to do it by calendar year, so this is net, so sometimes in one part of the year we get paid, the other time we'd have to pay, so it's the net of them. We paid 173 back in 16, 17 and 18, we both received money, and last year we paid 651, now this year 1.1. Yeah. Then the last slide, it's kind of difficult to see up here, I just have our historic rates, what they've been for Medicare since 2016. They've kind of went up and down. The one that hasn't went up and down, it's just pretty much went down, or it went up a little bit, but our outpatient cost to charge ratio, or our payment for outpatient went down. It used to be at 74, 76, and then it dropped to 49. That's a big indicator also in your charge. So if your charges are really low and your costs are staying the same, well, you're gonna get paid more, a better percentage on your charge, because it's keeping what Medicare says your costs are. So if you raise your rates, well, now you're raising your rates, but your costs are staying the same, so now they have to adjust it to that same dollar amount. Say if it's $50 on, or $49 on a $100 charge, they're gonna pay you $49 because that's your cost, but if you increase your charge to something else, then your cost to charge ratio is gonna change. I kind of outlined that in the more detailed packet too, but at 49% when I was in Dawson, we were around 42, 45, so going down the right direction. I'm trying to stay stable around that number. Otherwise, that's all I had for the presentation. You guys have any questions at all?
What did that do for 2019 as a whole? Can we still stay in the black? Can we still make money in 2019?
Yep, so our audit will be done in March. So we did book, I booked $300,000 for a potential Medicare payback, knowing that last year was $651. Thinking, it's not gonna be that much. I was wrong. Didn't really realize, how much that Medicare swing bed day really increased. That big, and that how big an effect it had on it. There were some other adjustments in the audit, which we'll get back in the audit report, and then we'll talk about when I do the presentation that I'll do for the city council. Our insurance was over over allowed, if you will, or over expense are estimated. We estimate, for expenses for insurance or self-insurance, we self-insure our staff, for the benefit. We over allowed for that, or, so it was actually a good year, so we actually adjusted down at the end of the year, kind of reconciled what our true costs were. And some other things, entries that the auditors said to make, so, I think it'll still be okay. I think we'll still be in the black. Not sure we'll be at, the 3, I can't remember where we were at the end of the year, I think it was close to 3%, 2.99. Might not be there, but I think we'll still be in the black, but audit's not done yet too, so I don't wanna, just say it either.
Have you guys considered any outside consulting, as many other hospitals do, just with all the changes that are happening here and numbers are changing so much, and help with other unforeseen things that could happen in the future?
What do you mean by consulting?
Well, just consulting firm, outside consulting firms, just to help take another look at it, third-party look at how the hospital's doing, where it's going. A lot of changes happening here over the last years.
You mean like are you talking like an operational assessment or something
Well, I
like
think
that?
it could be whatever one, I think it could be at whatever capacity you want. You could, they can help at whatever areas you may want them to help.
There are areas that, we usually use and not that we have to, but, use like ideally, that's who we've kind of go to, and we're actually sending out RFPs for, every 3 years, we send RFPs for our insurance or non-insurance auditing cost report. But, like, there are areas like, charge master review, that one's a little bit more expensive, but they really dig into your whole charge master, your revenue cycle, how everything flows in your hospital and clinic, and where areas you can improve on. They'll also look at cost report, how are things being reported, is there a better way, things like that. That's the more extensive one. We actually did do one last year that we did with a SHIP grant, it's called. A grant through HRSA and MDH that was around $10,000, $12,000, that we had a kind of a mini charge master review. Consultants came out and reviewed that too. So there are things like that, around, revenue cycle, and definitely, cost report, things like that come into play. Helping you guys do things better, things like that come up.
And maybe that just goes hand in hand with it too, but, is there more training or stuff that could be done just to, maybe get people thinking outside the box a little bit more, different things, different trends and things like that too.
Yeah.
I know there's some of that out there as well.
Yep, ideally, again, they have a critical access hospital conference every year. A lot of the other bigger accounting firms do too. That, it's a 3 or 4 day cost report boot camp. I did one 2 years ago. Last year it was in San Antonio, so I didn't go to that one, but it was in the cities. But there are, opportunities like that, to find for myself, which I love to go, go to and get more education, but definitely.
Yeah, I guess it'd be my point. Take a look at
Oh.
those things.
Well, I was just wondering, now, if you got this worksheet, how long would it take you to do a worksheet deal like that? What you're talking, I just don't want it where you get so involved with this Medicare thing, it takes away from your day-to-day stuff either, some of that stuff can get pretty involved,
No, it's not, it's intensive, it's a big workbook, getting a lot of data, but, we're kind of, like me and my team, my accounting and business office manager, were, the big part of the accounting, month to month, like the
Well,
monthly
I'm sure
financial
once you
statements.
do it a few times, then it's to be like secondhand.
Yeah, and it's, we're working on our process through the month to try to get things done sooner, so we gotta make sure we have time to do that and review that, so we're comfortable with the numbers. I think we'll be fine there.
I remember, the money wasn't ours, it was gonna be Medicare's. It was like writing a bill, when I think about it, just a hell of a big bill. But we also, as a board, I know we looked at $300,000 last year, thinking that was what we probably were gonna be looking at this year. So, and we had that $300,000 in mind when we, so, you can say 880,000, but it's still a big bill at the same time. But I also remember the days when we get 32 days, 30 days on the books. We thought we were never land here, if we remember that. I'm trying to stay on the positive note of this whole thing. And the fact is, I remember when we were 0, didn't have any days on the books. And we made an immense difference, the staff, doing a great job, and Lori and Jake and everybody else that's management there. So I think in the positives, and I looked at the stats from the first quarter here, the first 4 months of our hospital clinic, and looked at the statistics on that. And this year looks like a very good year for us, what I see. What it looks like is if we stay on this trend, we're gonna look at 400 more clinics calls. We're gonna double our surgery. We're gonna run up about 1,500 more on our psychological report, or personnel, or things that we're gonna do in the psych area, which we're doing very well on, one of our big areas. So, and also, our rest home is full. And we're making good money there too. So we see a lot of good things that are gonna happen for us in this next year. We're not gonna grow at the fastest rate we did before. And when we gave you that 60 days, not knowing that Medicare was gonna be owed, the good thing about it that I can say is that we had cash to pay for it. We could write a check out and still have 32 days, like approximately right now, on hand, cash on hand. Yeah, it was something that probably should have been watched over a period, but it was still money that was not ours. It was actually gonna, whether we saved it or whether we paid it all at once, it was gonna be Medicare's. And we should have probably lowered the cost of Medicare per patient on swing beds.
I think one thing to add too is, you know, you talk about volatility. Well, Appleton has been the picture of volatility, at least since I've been here, where when I came here, it was so far down with the volumes and that sort of thing. And then it came up, and we, you know, mistakenly, definitely, we both take responsibility for that and not seeing that number as well as we should have. But, you know, we aren't used to that from where we came from the last few years when we both came from Dawson. We didn't see this. You know, there was like even, so you didn't assume that you were gonna have those kind of wide swings in what the Medicare payback would be. Everybody has Medicare paybacks or receives money. In 2017, when I came here in October, we got a check for 400,000, I believe it was. So, I mean, it's so far out of whack. So some of that, you know, and for what you were saying, Jay, you know, you can get consultants and things like that, but some things can't always be as easily predicted. Even when he talks about that model, the model, even our auditors couldn't get it built quick enough for us because we're very unusual in our type of facility to have mental health services. So they had to figure out how to build that model so that that all fit into that. So that delayed it too, and he's not gonna say any of that because he's not gonna wanna pass the buck or not take responsibility. But there were things that got in the way of that as well. And like he said, by the time we would have had that model and been able to see it, we already had $800,000 we were gonna have to pay back. And I don't know that there's any way you would have known that ahead of time. So, I mean, those are some things, but.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, kind of in response to Jay's comment there too, that for oversimplification purposes, we kind of got caught in the perfect storm. We were coming off 2017, 2018, when patient numbers were way down. Profitability was non-existent. And coming into 2018, patient numbers started to climb a little bit again. We added a surgeon to our staff. 2019, back up again to 2018, we got a Medicare reimbursement coming in at the end of the year due to the high costs of operation in relation to the patient numbers. Moving into 2019, swing beds increased usage by roughly 60–65%. And the cost of operation declined comparatively then due to the fact that there was more patient load coming in to spread out that operational cost. So things were building a lot faster than what anybody anticipated, and kind of a case of where too much efficiency is costing us, is penalizing us. But although, like Ron said, it was never the hospital's money per se, because it's not like you're getting
assessed a payment penalty, it's just, we have to refund Medicare money that by their judgment, we did not earn due to our
We're beginning to
efficiency.
think that Medicare is not a good word.
They don't like us.
Well, and I think the hard thing too is, in any other business, like Dan, in your business, if you increase your volumes of business and you decrease your costs, that's an awesome thing, and that's what the auditors say to us. But unfortunately, with that comes, you have to pay this money back because now we recognize we overpaid you. So I think the hard part is we're doing what we're supposed to be doing to make this business successful, but we have to get to that stabilize, and we have to be on top of our monthly, on top of that, and that's our plan. Jake and I have sat down, we have a plan in place that we feel is going to correct this situation. So, we're not gonna let that happen again. if we get
Well,
Yeah, that's my-
You just gotta understand that the position is that, you can make some management decisions when you got 60 days on hand. When it gets cut in half, there could have been some bad decisions, by not knowing that you didn't have it too. I mean, that's our concern on this end. Because no matter what happens here, the financial stability of the hospital affects what we're doing too. We're trying to bond for water, and everything co-mingles here, so it's a huge deal. I mean, we wouldn't want it to go any further, you know what I mean? We don't want to get any worse than.
The good thing is we're paying, all our bills are paid,
Yeah.
we have cash on hand, and we hope to move ahead on that.
Well, just so we get a grip on this, just so down the road, you know what I mean? We don't
Yeah.
make management decisions that where we think we have it, we don't have it, that's my concern, I guess.
And that's our feeling as well, which is why our monthly report, I mean, they lay it out, the auditors develop that model. So what Jake does is punch the numbers in, the model tells us where we sit.
If I may, I'm on there with you, Jake. If Jake wants to attend any sort of boot camp, I am supportive of that, and I would encourage it. And in speaking to other cities that have hospitals that they own, you guys are doing so much. And I mean, you are to be complimented for identifying the mistake and bringing it to us. I really respect that, because I've been in this situation. I've made huge mistakes, guys. But what I've learned to do is to ask for help. And speaking to Todd Kraftke over in the city of St. Paul, their hospital administrator and CFO use QHR. And basically, you pick.
I don't mean to smile, but Amber's, they were here in Appleton. They spent, what, 1.2 million on them? Yeah.
Okay. Notwithstanding your experience, they've worked in many other communities. And the good thing about them is that you get to pick which service you really want to use. You don't have to use all of their bells and whistles. You can just use what you think you need.
Well, and I will say, I do know I was here as a director of nursing when we went with QHR, and, it's certainly something, I know Annie Kells was sent to this thing in Brentwood, Tennessee, to get education on it, so, I guess.
Well, a gentleman that we had talked to, he just made the statement that they use this company just for the Medicare part, and it only costs them like $10,000 a year to have them just take care of that part, 10 to 13,000. But I mean, if they could get a grip just on that part for that money, I just thought if it's not taking your time away from your normal functions day to day, I mean, that money would be well spent if they could track it real close.
So, can you explain what you're saying? I'm not sure.
Well,
I
they
understand what you're
just
saying.
have this company just do that, like that Medicare thing, like that worksheet you're talking, all they did is they tracked that portion of their hospital. They didn't dig into all your business, just the certain portions you needed help in.
Yeah, I think we'll be fine with doing that ourselves. I know some other CFOs that do it, and I mean, if there's any questions, or auditors, I mean, that'd be the first question, because our cost report requires, because it comes from them. Definitely good education though, I mean, look into it more, but like, along with our RFPs that we're gonna be sending out, try to get a cost report, and auditors, different firms, having conversations with them, what kind of education do you guys have, for cost report and around things like that, because that's a good thing too.
How did you draft your RFP? What's in it?
You can look at it, what our expectations are,
Do you have tiers of advantageousness?
We can look at it.
Okay. Okay.
There was, it was 2 pages. I got it from another local business or hospital that they used.
Okay.
Anything else?
Move on to coronavirus discussion.
Right here?
It's ironic we're having a meeting here at the hospital.
Feels weird.
I planned all of it.
I think you can. Try it. Yeah. Go back. Yeah, you should be good.
Hello, Mayor, Council, Board. I'm Jason, I'm your lab X-ray manager, also do emergency preparedness and infectious control. So obviously, the COVID-19 has been a big topic of discussion for everyone. I don't think I have to explain what's on everyone's mind when I say COVID-19. So I'm just gonna start, kind of go from the very high level and kind of bring it down at the end, tell you what we're doing here at Appleton Area Health to get ready for this and what's going on. So just before I start, the CDC and MDH have excellent websites. They keep everything up to date daily. If you're ever interested in what's going on, you can just go to these sites, MDH. If you just Google MDH, it'll come up to that website. And also Countryside Public Health for Swift County is also putting out a lot of information. Coronaviruses. So first I'm just gonna talk a little bit about this. It's actually named the SARS-CoV-2, and the disease is called a coronavirus disease. We do a respiratory pathogen panel here through Appleton that we send to Wilmer, and they actually test for coronaviruses. I was just gonna show you this because if anyone has a respiratory pathogen panel and they see they had a coronavirus, they may kind of get nervous. But this is not the COVID-19. And this actually, over like what 2019, those viruses caused, 1.7% of respiratory illnesses and all that. Just to keep in mind that coronavirus is worldwide and it's everywhere. It's just this certain COVID-19, this one that's affecting everyone. Does that make sense? Historically, I was going to talk a little bit about the severe, the SARS back in '02 and the MERS. And I was going to bring this up. Oh, before I get to the next page. So how contagious is COVID-19? They're averaging for every individual, they can infect 1.4 to 2.5 people. In comparison, influenza, it can infect 1.3, and with SARS back in '02 was 2.0. That's with someone within about 6 feet talking with no protective gear on that. Now looking back at the historically, so you look at the COVID-19, and that's from today from the CDC. We're at worldwide, we're at 118,000 with 4,292 deaths with a fatality rate of 3%. Influenza 17-18, we had 61,000 deaths with a 0.1% mortality rate.